In this interview, I meet up with Dr. Erica Warren. She is a seasonal learning specialist, educational therapist, instructor, artist, writer, and an advocate. Dr. Warren tells her students that she is a personal trainer for the brain and she tailors instruction and cognitive remedial therapy for each client. Let's welcome Dr. Erica Warren. Thank you so much, Dr. Erica Warren, for coming in today. So I really appreciate you being here.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. So I want to start off by asking you, what is multisensory learning?
Multisensory learning is, there have been many terms that have been used over the years. You will have heard learning styles, you've heard multiple intelligences, you might have heard cognitive styles. And the bottom line is everybody learns a little bit differently. We all have different brains. The brain is very, very complex. And what I have done in my research over the last 20 years and in working with students is I developed 12 different ways of learning, which combines learning styles. And it's kind of funny because there are a lot of people that say that there aren't learning styles, which is ridiculous. We don't all learn the same way. It's really clear. So it combines the concept of learning styles. And I think the problem is that it wasn't comprehensive enough. People were saying you're either visual or you're auditory, you're tactile or you're kinesthetic. You might be both, you might be neither. So I look into 12 different ways of learning, which includes the classic visual, auditory, tactile, and kinesthetic, but also includes other modalities such as sequential processing, and simultaneous processing, which is looking at an information processing model, as well as looking at multiple intelligences to really disclose 12 different ways of learning.
Get that into your work with your students, right?
I do use that with my work with my students. In fact, I really figure out what their best ways of learning are before I start to work with them. And I assess the whole family. And I have an inventory that I sell at Good Sensory Learning that looks into that. I have a parent one and I have a teacher one.
Okay.
And but it's very, very useful because in the consultation, it helps me to teach the parents how to step out of their way of learning so that they can accommodate their child's way of learning. And it really, what it does is it creates a way for you to reach and connect with the student. And once they trust you and you've got a great rapport, you can help them to step out of their comfort zone into other ways of learning. But initially, the way to connect is to teach in a way that empowers them.
Yeah, exactly. So how does this approach, I guess you kind of answered that a little bit, but how does this approach kids with learning difficulties?
Well, I think, to me, whether you have a learning difficulty or not, tapping into your best way of learning is going to make learning more fun and more empowering and definitely more engaging and more motivating. If you ask a student about a teacher that they loved, it's almost always because they had a similar way of learning. Yeah. Sometimes it's because they're just playful, but everybody kind of has a comfort zone of how to learn. Some people love to touch things. Other people like to talk about things. And some people, you can figure them out very, very easily. Others are a little bit more difficult to understand. Like, it's harder to see someone that really benefits from reflective learning because that's a very internal process, whereas some of them are much more external, such as verbal learners.
Yeah. So you said that you have is it a test that the parents can take to figure out what's their learning style?
It's actually a lot more than just a test, more than inventory. It has the whole history behind, really combination of all of the different ways of processing. And it also has workshop materials for if you get the teachers one. But it also offers a lot of recommendations on how to work with the student, how to organize the student, how to engage the student, and it's all broken down by the different ways of learning, which is on a continuum. So you don't have to be visual or auditory. You can be both or neither. But you're never nothing. Everybody learns all ways. However, it's on that continuum. So some people rarely use visual because they're just not visual learners, whereas others use it all the time. So I really see it as a continuum than, being one way or the other.
Yeah. And when parents are thinking of, homeschooling or unschooling their kids, this would be good to figure out, right?
It's really important because what everybody does, not just parents, but teachers do it too. We teach the way we learn.
Yeah.
That's how we relate to everybody. We just assume that they learn the same way. And because we don't really talk about it, we make these assumptions. And so if it really helps a parent to rewrite notes, they're going to insist that their kids rewrite notes. Or if it really helps the parent for it to be quiet, they're going to insist that there's quiet for their kids. Or if it really helps a parent to sit still and not move, they're going to tell their kids, sit still, sit still. Well, what if their kid's a kinesthetic learner? You're actually telling them not to learn.
Yeah.
In a way,
Yeah.
And it's going to be discouraging and frustrating, and you probably won't connect. So it really helps you to step out of your way of learning to accommodate others. And it develops compassion because it goes both ways, because the parent can show the kid, wow, look, I learned differently than you.
Yep.
So, and there are times when the parent needs to be learning and the child needs to be compassionate. Yeah. So, if the parent says, I really need quiet because I can't think, now the kid understands why. And they can be more compassionate too.
Exactly. So very, very good to have that.
Yeah, really important.
To understand each other. And, even you can help your child better, right? When you're at home, you're going to homeschool and.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. And what is cognitive remedial therapy?
Cognitive remedial therapy is something that I do a lot of. And basically, in a nutshell, it's taking the cognitive processing weaknesses of an individual, and we all have strengths and weaknesses, and it's exercising those particular skills so that you can improve those weaknesses and in time can even turn them into strengths. So let me give you an example. I had a student that came to see me over the summer, and she was tested and she had very, very, very weak visual processing skills. So all summer we played visual processing games. They were all games that were strengthening that, if you want to call it, that muscle. And by the end of the summer, it was now a strength. She was retested and she no longer had a visual processing weakness. However, when kids have those types of things and they're not addressed, it can lead to a lot of academic problems. If you have visual processing weaknesses, you might struggle with tracking when you're reading. Well, if you're struggling with tracking while you're reading, that's going to impact reading comprehension. And so going back and strengthening core cognitive skills is extremely important because it's the foundation for learning.
Yeah. And is that the premises of your work with a lot of the students? Is that what they come to you for?
Yeah, that I would say that's a good piece of it. I wear many hats. Sometimes I'm reteaching in a multisensory way. Other times I'm doing cognitive remedial therapy. Other times I'm doing mindfulness. So I don't have a program. I really create an individualized program for each of my students. And if I don't have the materials, we create them together. Yeah. Because when they're a part of the creation process, then they're sold.
Yeah, and it works.
It does. Yeah. Yeah. Integrate what they're passionate about into the lessons is key.
It's key. Yes. Why is it important to teach kids about learning to learn?
Right. Well, that is actually the name of my private practice. And a lot of kids don't know how to learn. They don't have the study skills that they need. They don't have the attentional skills. They don't understand how to motivate themselves. They don't know how to jump through the hoops. And so much of academics and learning and success in life is learning how to jump through certain hoops.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, learning to learn is a very important skill so that they can manage their own learning and their attention and their motivation.
And if they don't know, like, you could teach it through your methods, right? Like, this is how we learn, right? Like, it's like, you can tell them you don't know yet because you need the process to learn it.
Well, right. So sometimes it's study skills, sometimes it's metacognition. And metacognition is the awareness of your own thoughts. And when you are aware of your own thoughts, then you can control your own thoughts. You can, it's so many of us are kind of sitting in the back seat and letting our brains and our emotions control us. I teach kids to step into the front and take control of the steering wheel, so that if they're having a bad day and they go into class, that they can put that to the side so that they can actually learn.
Mm-hmm.
Because some kids, they'll get a bad grade back and they don't learn anything for the rest of the day.
Mm-hmm.
So, instead of their emotions controlling them, how can they then control their emotions? It's huge. That's something, that's a gift you can give them for the rest of their life. Because I think everybody struggles with that.
Yeah.
But boy, if we taught kids those skills at a young age, their lives would be much better.
Yeah, 100%. Some of the viewers that I have here are gonna, thinking about homeschooling, right? And they're gonna start sitting with their kids, starting to do their work at home. Kids get easily distracted and their attention is very short, right? So how do you, I wanted to give some advice to parents, like how do you get student engaged into learning when they come?
I think there are a few things. One thing is to be really excited about the lessons yourself and come up with really awesome names. And I shared this with you another time, and I'll share it with your audience. I don't teach script. I don't teach cursive. I teach roller coaster letters. It's the same concept, but when you wrap it in something fun, it becomes fun. So, and if you imagine the letters as a roller coaster ride, wow, then it actually becomes, really engaging. And the hardest letters are the best roller coaster rides.
Nice.
And you can come up with all, I name each of the letters, like the Z is the Humpty Bump letter. And so then that makes a multisensory, because you're adding a little bit of a rhythm and a beat to it. You're adding auditory, you're adding visual, you're adding tactile, you're bringing games into it, which makes it more interactive and more verbal. So, making lessons highly engaging that way, through really being very, very excited about it, being very kind and patient with kids, is also extremely important. Never giving any academic assignments when you're angry or as a punishment, because it will shut them down very, very quickly. You never want them to associate learning with anything but joy and fun and play. And learning should be and can be incredibly fun and playful. And it can be a wonderful way for parents to connect with their kids. You just have to really wrap it in something really exciting.
Yes.
And be really careful.
Yes.
Of the words that you choose.
Yeah. And going back to what you said earlier, that learning style, right? Like if the distraction and the short attention span is probably you're not using what they like or the way they like to learn.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. That's right. And doing fun things, like if you want your children to read more, then get the whole family to have a certain time where everybody reads, And if your child still isn't interested, then have fun making a reading nook in the house with lots of pillows and everything that they love, and associating it with all their favorite foods. And you can always turn a kid around if you integrate the things that they love. I had one student who I talked to you about in the past as well, who he couldn't even pick up a pencil without having a meltdown. But when I asked him what he loved, he said Pokemon. So I was like, okay, there's the magic bullet. So we integrated Pokemon into all of his lessons. So the way that we got him writing was through drawing and drawing tutorials on YouTube of how to draw Pokemon. And we did it together. And he would see how I held the pencil. And he's like, well, how do you do that so well? Let me show you how to hold the pencil. You know, and before long, not only was he writing well, but he was drawing well. And more than anything, he looked forward to it. Now there was a pleasant association instead of all these negative associations. So having pleasant associations is really important, which is why you've got to be very careful about the words that you choose. You know, you have to be very careful that you don't use any negative labels like careless or lazy, or I don't even use no or wrong or incorrect. I'll say almost. Almost is a motivating thing to say. When you say no, it's just a little traumatic. You know, a wrong is traumatic, but almost is like exciting. Like, oh, almost got it. That's, you know, or warmer or close or excellent try. Give it another shot. You know, so being really positive in that way will encourage them to really find that joy.
Yeah, very, very important. You kind of touched on this, but how do you motivate your students? Because another thing that's going to come while the parents are going to work with their kids they're going to say, as you just said, he seems to be lazy or she seems to be lazy. He doesn't want to do work, right? Yeah. So how do you
games, wrap it in games. You know, not just the titles being exciting, but actually integrating games. So, you know, that's another thing that I sell at Good Sensory Learning. Just over the years, I have integrated a ton of games into my practice, and I've shared them online with people that go and purchase my products at Good Sensory Learning. If it could be anything from a game that I have called Piggy Banking, which teaches them real life math in the real world, to, you know, Place Value Panic, which is a card game that teaches place value. You know, I have the multiplication tables, you know, where they integrate mazes and songs, and some of my students have done dance routines to them. But, you know, the idea is to games and what's their joy. If their joy is dancing, then you have to integrate dancing. You know, if their joy is puppies, then you integrate puppies. But most of my, I mean, all of my games were created specifically for students. So, but reading remediation, I must have close to 100 different reading games. So to help kids, you know, really have fun, whether it's a board game or a card game. But what I found was that initially I would bribe them with candy or with stickers, but the games, I found that they would read 6 or 7 times the amount in an hour, and they didn't even notice it, and they couldn't wait to come back and play again. So yeah, games are huge. Games are huge.
Make it fun. Awesome. So, you know, parents are now thinking about this alternative educational options, right? They're thinking, what can I do in the, you know, upcoming school year? You know, what advice do you have for parents starting this journey? Because this is a big, big decision for some families.
It is a big decision. You know, what I would say is find a homeschooling community. You don't really want to do it in isolation, and there are a lot of great communities that out there that are available. The other thing is consider letting other people help you. So you can find other homeschoolers, and you can do kind of small groups. You can find learning specialists like myself to work with them either in person or online. I think, and I've worked a lot with homeschoolers in the past. Sometimes it's just a matter of, if you can find someone, I do this, but if you can find someone that will almost give you assignments, the parent, give the parent assignments, say, this is maybe having a session where you work with the parent and the student, you teach them a certain lesson, and then I'll give the parents basically, 6-7 hours worth of lesson ideas for them to do with their child. So, they're all, it depends on what they need, but whether it's something like remediation or whether it's just plain lessons getting through the math curriculum. But a lot of people also do consultations with me to figure out, what are the best programs for their situation, or even just helping them figure out what is their situation.
Yep.
So yeah, having somebody to bounce ideas off of, whether it's someone in a homeschooling community. Marianne Sunderland, I don't know if you know about her. She's great. She's great for ideas for dyslexia,
Okay.
which is also my expertise as well. But she's got a whole homeschooling community as well. But yeah, so just what you want to do is pull all your resources together. Don't even start until you really get all of your resources together. Otherwise, it's going to be really easy to get overwhelmed. And make sure you have a schedule. The schedule is really, really, really important, not just for the kids, but also for the parents. So you just stick to a schedule, because they'll probably have a little bit of a hard time getting into it, but once they get into the routine, they'll be fine.
Yeah. Awesome. And teaching our kids is hard, our own kids. Like we need, right? So sometimes, parents have very little patience, or we all also have over expectations for our own kids, right? So what can parents do to be successful with their kids? If you don't want to get into a power struggle, right?
That's right. That's right. Well, give your kids options. Allow them to choose. If you're always dictating, you're going to get a lot of pushback. But if you give different options of, okay, well, let's see, we're studying colonial America. Here are 3 different assignments that you can do, and you get to choose how you want to do it. Or you can present to me a creative assignment, and if I think it's going to work, then you can do that. So, and doing a lot of fun projects. And when I say fun projects, the only person that's going to be able to define whether it's fun is the kid. So really pay attention to what are their best ways of learning, what do they love to do. So if they love to rap, let them, it doesn't matter what they do as long as they're able to show you that they have the knowledge, right? So allowing them giving a variety of assignments, but also a variety of ways of learning. So if they love videos, there are so many incredible resources on YouTube. I mean, unbelievable.
Yes.
And TED Ed, and the list goes on and on. Khan Academy. There's everything is out there. The trick is just finding it. But first you have to figure out what your child needs
or would like.
That's right.
You've already touched on this a little bit, but the language around our kids, right? So not every day is going to be same. Like I'm not going to be feeling, for my mom, I'm not going to be feeling every day same, right? But still, we have to be mindful about our language, right? Can you explain about that, like how important that is?
It's really important. So, our language in what we're putting out and what we're allowing too. So it's important to have certain boundaries as well with kids. But yeah, be really mindful of being kind, and even taking a moment every day, the parents, that is, to just like 3 to 5 minute meditation of loving kindness, of just getting grounded, getting peaceful. And if you can even do that with your children to get them grounded and feeling peaceful, then you'll see all sorts of shifts. And that's another publication that I have, which is meditations for kids,
Yeah.
but there are also meditations which help with hemisphere integration.
Mm.
So there are those times where the kids just, when I say hemisphere integration, I mean that sometimes they're kind of lost in one side of the brain.
Mm.
They might be, stuck in the left side, or they might be stuck in the right side. And the way we learn best is to integrate the brain fully. And there are certain activities that you can do where you cross the midline of the body to get the brain
Mm.
more united, and so that both are activated.
Nice.
And doing some little activities like that, and little kinesthetic, if they're very kinesthetic, doing little kinesthetic cross the midline kind of activities, so that they can be fully integrated, fully relaxed, ready to go. But don't forget that parents need to do that sometimes too. I mean, there are days everybody wakes up and we have an expression, I got off the wrong side of the bed, and that's for a reason, because we do. We wake up and we just don't feel so good. We're grouchy or grumpy. And so we have to be really careful about getting grounded and in a pleasant place before we go into our sessions with our kids, so that we're not sharing that energy with them, but that we're addressing it within ourselves first.
Yes, yes. And with this expectation, because our parents were more strict, right? The way we grew up was different than how we're growing our kids, right? So we have expectations that will just surface without us even knowing sometimes, right? Because it's in me. It'll just come out. So how do you stop it? like, what do you do then?
Well, you breathe, and then you admit it. You talk about it. You tell them, I say, wow, I'm feeling really grumpy today. And it's really funny. If you can do that, it diffuses it. And it also teaches the kids to manage their own emotions. But it's very interesting if you admit it, like, wow, I'm feeling really sad today, or I'm feeling really grouchy today, or I'm in a bad mood. I'm in a bad mood. How are you feeling?
Yeah.
I wonder what got me in a bad mood. So you're kind of thinking out loud. It's teaching them metacognitive skills. And then you can even say to them, what can we do to get me into a better mood?
Nice.
And then if you're doing that with a kid, then, before you know it, and if you're always doing that with your kids, they're going to start doing it with you. And they're going to say, I'm really grumpy. I don't feel like doing this. Can you help me feel better? And then, wow, then that changes the game.
Yeah.
So it's going back to that metacognition. It's going back to that, okay, observing your emotions, observing how you feel, and then making a choice. Am I going to continue to feel this way, or am I going to do what I can to shift? And if we can, again, teach our kids how to shift and recognize these things. And once we're there, it's almost impossible to change it. But if you recognize when it first comes upon you, now when you're grumpy and someone else says you're grumpy, that's going to make you even more grumpy. But what you want to do is you want to self-generate, and you can get kids to do that by exhibiting that behavior.
Good role modeling for your kids.
Yeah, right on.
The other part I want to touch on is we had our parents tell us you can't listen to music while you study because you're not really studying. But we're changing all those things now, right? With our kids, with the learning styles, where as you research and find more information, we can learn anyway, as long as it's your way, right?
That's right. And that's actually one of the 12 ways of learning that I go into. There are what I call rhythmic melodic learners. And within that category, there are some learners that learn better with music. And the reason why is it creates expected noise. And many of these kids have attentional issues, and unexpected noise is really, really distracting. What attention deficit disorder, it's a misnomer. It's really attention surplus disorder. They have too much attention. And that's why they can't keep their attention. They're constantly getting distracted. So a car passing by will distract them. A dog barking will distract them. Most people can block those out, but they can't. So if they have music, it blocks out all the unexpected noise, and they have expected noise. And it can be, if they pick the right kind of music, it can be very soothing so that it kind of calms them. So nobody knows except for the individual. I'll never forget this one kid that said that heavy metal helped him do homework.
Wow.
And I was like, okay, all right, that's extreme, and prove it to me. And I had an Amazon Echo, and he blasted heavy metal music.
Wow.
I could not think at all. And
Yeah.
this kid blasted through his homework, and I was like, wow, that's amazing.
Oh.
I was like paying homage. I was like, wow, I definitely don't have that brain. And so yeah, it's very, very individualistic. He was a kid with very, very severe attention deficit disorder. So, but it was fascinating to see what he could do. And that's the thing. You'll often be really amazed at what kids can do, because your brain just doesn't function that way. I'm a visual learner, but I don't get very vivid visuals. But I remember having a student that said that her visuals were so vivid that there were like hallucinations all around her. And that the only reason why she knew that they didn't exist is because she couldn't hear them. And then I had another student that said that the way he drew was to project an image on a piece of paper and trace it. There are other kids that have blind mind's eye. They can't see anything, but we don't talk about these things. And wow, they're really important.
Yes.
Because when a kid has a blind mind's eye, that's the first thing I need to teach them, is how to visualize.
Yes.
But if a kid hates to read, and you never discovered it's because they have a blind mind's eye and they don't like to read because it's like watching a movie with their eyes closed, then all this reading remediation and all these lessons that you're giving is just going to be so painful. Let's get to the root of the cause. That's what the cognitive remedial therapy does. It gets to the heart. It gets to the core problem so that you can fix it.
Very, very cool. Why I'm asking these is because the parents that are going to be, homeschooling or unschooling or whatever, when they start to notice these things, we have our own values from our past, right? When I was in school, that's not what we used to do. We can't move. We need to sit and work, right? Nobody talked to us that much. Like, you just did your work, what you were told, right? But those are all shifting. We're shifting into it's been shifting for a while, but now then more than ever, parents are going to want to apply those, but that's not how your child might want to work anymore, right? So there's a shift.
It's very, very different. It's funny, my doctorate, I finished in adult education, and I use adult education more with my students than anything in this day and age, because kids are no longer a blank slate. They come with a wealth of knowledge. They come with a wealth of experience, and they have so much at their fingertips, literally, with technology, that what I find is best is to guide and facilitate.
Yes.
A little, and scaffolding when necessary. Guide, facilitate, scaffolding, and allow them to be a part of the learning process and a part of the decision process of how to learn content and what is exciting. And they're lucky. They have so many resources, and they'll have things that they like. I mean, if we'd had that many resources too, we probably would have picked and choose, and we would have said, no, I don't want to do that. So in many ways, they're very fortunate. In other ways, it's overwhelming. It's overwhelming.
Especially for parents, because they're not used to, that's not the way we grew up, right?
That's right. Well, you have to let go of that. You have to let go of your learning style, and you have to let go of the way you grew up, because it's a different world and it's changing at such a fast pace.
Yes.
So let them teach you about what their world, because we are still stuck in our old world in many ways, because was our
Those were heavy stuff, right? Those were big consequences if you didn't do it. So we got punished, so we better do it, right? So
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
embedded into you deeply.
yeah. For some of us, for sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
It is very different.
Yeah, and that's what I wanted to bring out, with your help, is that to parents to understand that you may have different experience with education, how you learned and how your parents expected you to learn, but those expectations, you need to go, as you said, with no expectations, and then just let your child tell you, let them lead you, right, to what
Yeah,
works.
I mean, well, you can have some expectations. That's okay.
Yeah,
You can facilitate, but be flexible.
flexible.
Be flexible. Be flexible. Be kind. Be fun.
Mm-hmm.
Be fun. That's huge.
Yeah.
And have fun. If there's things that you love to do, ask the kids, oh, I love to do this. Can I share this with you? It brings me so much joy.
Mm-hmm.
If you present it that way, they might actually step out of one of their comfort zones to give something a try, because if they see how excited you are and they see how much joy it creates, they'll enjoy being around you because you're happy.
Yes, yes. Some days, kids will test your patience, right? And you have to be ready for that. And
Yeah,
that's,
and there are times where you have to create boundaries. There are
mm-hmm,
times where you have to say, I'm not okay with that.
mm-hmm,
I'm not okay with that. You know, and there are times where you can give them a personal day.
mm,
We all need personal days. But you can say you can have one personal day a month.
mm-hmm,
That's the boundary. So you have to have certain limits. And if kids are being really rude, what I find is I'm honest with them. I'll just say, you know what? That really hurt my feelings. I
mm-hmm,
don't like the way you're speaking to me. That makes me feel really bad. And they almost always say, I'm sorry.
mm-hmm.
And it stops it right in the track. But if you start to punish them or get irritable with them, then it just escalates.
Yes.
So the biggest thing is just when it's happening in the moment, just stay calm, breathe, breathe. That's a huge one. Take a deep breath and say, all right, this has nothing to do with me. How
Yes.
can I manage this situation? How can I step into my best self and
Mm,
handle this in a loving way?
exactly. Mm-hmm.
That's the magic.
Yeah. Yeah. So, some parents might have children with learning difficulties at home, and, they start homeschooling or unschooling and stuff. What should they remember, like when they start this journey? Like it's a little bit harder than, the other, if you have a child with not learning disability or learning difficulties, right?
Yeah, I think, well, and I will disclose that I myself am dyslexic. So
Mm,
I feel that I'm very qualified to answer this one. I think believe in your children,
mm,
believe in them, believe that they can, believe that they can, believe that they will. Um, yeah, just nurture their strengths, remediate their weaknesses, and give them a lot of love and kisses.
mm,
In those moments of frustration, you know, learn to not take things personally, but to, embrace, patience and loving kindness. And when things get really bad, stop everything and share some gratitude.
mm,
You know, share some things that you're grateful for, and see if they can share some things that they're grateful for. You know, school needs to be fun, and the second it doesn't get fun, you guys have to walk away from it.
mm,
You walk away from it and you do something else, and then you come back when everybody's in a better mood. But
mm,
don't try to push through when it's getting unpleasant.
mm.
You just don't want to. You never want to have that association with school
Yeah.
or with a child parent relationship.
Mm,
It happens because we're all human. And when that happens, you have to be kind and forgiving of yourself. because, and kids will be too. The next time, do better.
Mhm.
Each
How,
time, try to pull yourself into that best self.
mhm. How much supervision do you think should parent actually, I mean, it depends on age, right, too, but how much should they be with, let's say, for example, their 8-year-old or something? Should they sit and do all of the work, or should they just give and walk of it?
That's a great question. And that goes right back to learning style.
Mhm.
So kids, here's another one. Interactive learners really like the company of others.
Mm,
So they need the company. They don't like to learn in isolation. So whether it's with a sibling or a friend or a parent or a mentor or even a dog, they can teach a lesson to their dog, or a
mm,
stuffed animal, that's really, really important for some kids. Interactive learners really need to learn with others around them. So there's that piece. And it doesn't matter what age they are, they want to learn with others. They want to work with others. They just want to
mm.
be with others. They're uncomfortable being alone.
Yeah.
And so that has nothing to do with age. But I think, and it's remarkable to me. Sometimes I've got tiny little kids that have no trouble working by themselves,
Mm,
and other kids that have separation anxiety. So
mm,
there's a huge continuum. I think we want to get them to be working independently and self-initiating. So anything you can do to reward that behavior and to gently guide them into that is going to be beneficial. But understand, if they're truly interactive learners, that's what's going to be most empowering. That's what's going to be most engaging. That's what's going to be most fun.
mm,
So if you can't be there, then find someone else that can, or allow them to even do online
mm,
with other kids. That is interactive.
mhm. Yeah.
So, or even interacting with others on online sites in particular, so that maybe you're not in a Zoom, but you might be in a game with somebody in Japan. It is,
Mhm.
it's amazing what we can do these days,
Yeah, yeah.
even when we're isolated.
Because I think there's some people get it wrong, I think, a little bit, because independent, right? Because then we say, like, if you sit with your kid, they're going to become dependent, right, all the time, if you just sit with them. But it all depends on the child's learning style, as you said.
It does, and it also depends on your style. If you're constantly that helicopter pilot or a helicopter parent, I think they call it, that's constantly breathing down their neck and constantly correcting it and constantly taking the pencil out of their hands, that's
Mm,
a problem. Never take a pencil out of a kid's hand. Have your own. Never take the paper away. Have your own. If
mm,
the child's doing a lesson, print out 2 copies. And if you want to show them how to do it, show them on your own copy,
mm,
so that they always have the pencil in their hand. So
mm,
that way you're not doing it for them.
mm,
You can do it with them, but don't do it for them.
mm. Very important. Yeah.
Mhm.
You always tell your kids that you are a personal trainer for their brain.
I do, which is fun. It's,
Yes.
for many, many years, I tried to figure out what's the best way to wrap what I do. Because as a child, I had to go to a tutor that was very, very traumatic. And it was an awful experience. So I don't like to be called a tutor. Um, I call myself a learning specialist and educational therapist. But when I'm talking to kids, I'm one of 2 things. For the older kids, I'm a personal trainer for the brain. And
Mm.
for the younger kids, I'm a magician.
Oh,
Because
nice.
as a magician, and I say I'm a magician because I teach you tricks,
Mm,
and tricks on how to learn faster, better, and more efficiently.
mm,
And so, and what I usually say too is, there's one thing that you must know about me, and I hope it's okay.
mm.
I play a lot of games, so I sure hope you'd like to do that. And they're always like this. They're very excited. But it doesn't matter what the parents think. What matters is what the kids think. If
Mhm,
they want to come to the sessions, then I will work with them. If they don't want to come to the sessions, I tell them everything about me, and I'll say, when you're ready, let your
mm,
parents know. Because
mm.
it's really important that there never any negative associations with learning.
Mm,
Really important.
mm, mm. So they like that name, the older kids. Take
The
go.
personal trainer for the brain, yeah, that works really well.
Nice. Um, what do you do to make learning fun for kids? I think you shared some of the activities, right? Like, making stories, and you had some other ideas you
Well,
shared.
so other things that I do in my publications, which people can get, is, for example, when teaching order of operations,
Mm-hmm.
there's the acronym PEMDAS.
Mm-hmm.
So what I have them do is I have them make a mobile,
Mm-hmm.
and it comes with all the materials. But what's most confusing about PEMDAS is that it's division or multiplication depends on which one comes first. Well, when they make the mobile, the arms move around and the legs move around. So then they understand the concept. When you try to teach it in a non-visual and non-spatial way, it's really hard to get it. But when they actually do the activity, and so it's an art activity. And even when I teach prepositions, they get to make an igloo, and then they've got Preppy the preposition penguin, and then you can place them in the igloo, on top of the igloo, beside the igloo, and that's how they learn about prepositions. So making kind of really cute and fun and artistic activities is really important. Bringing a lot of color into learning, particularly for math, because it can define stages or steps. But kids, it's funny, if you ask them to write in just either red, or usually it's blue or black, it gets a little bit boring. But when you can use something like friction markers, which are erasable markers or pens or highlighters, it adds a little bit of magic to the lesson, and it makes it a little bit more fun and a little bit more engaging. So, whatever you can do. I use balloons all the time with little kids. You can put anything on a balloon, and then it turns it into a game. Balloons, balls, yoga mats. I use yoga mats all the time. I draw on yoga mats, and they have to jump to eh. So, it's just really important to think out of the box. And the nice thing is there are a ton of resources already available on my website, but in many other locations on the internet as well, which offer all of these lessons kind of wrapped in a little bit of play is great.
I think there are just a lot of resources available. Just have to gather them.
That's right.
It's just only a matter of gathering them, for sure. Yes. I wanted to go back before we end here as to the learning style, because I think that is so important, because a lot of the fights that we might have with our kids can, be reduced or eliminated, even if we understand ours, like you said, and theirs, right? So how does the test go? Like, like you said, it's not a test, right? It's an
inventory. It's a questionnaire.
Question.
For young children, I think it's 36 items, and the parent can read it out loud.
Okay.
For the older kids, and sometimes if the kids are pretty advanced in like third grade, I'll let them do the adult version. And then they're answering questions about how they learn best, and again they learn about 12 different ways of learning, and then that turns into lists that the teachers or parents can look at, that which help to define what are the best ways of empowering them through instruction and through assignments. And it makes it into very much of a no-brainer, and it really helps. It's funny, I can remember one of my students saying, "Oh, that's why my mom is always telling me to organize, because she needs to be organized. I don't need to be organized. She doesn't." Like, that's right. So whenever you're organizing, you're doing something really kind for your mom. Oh, okay. And then parents will be like, "Oh, so I shouldn't be telling Billy to sit still?" I'm like, "No, get him a trampoline. And if it bothers you, don't look at him." You can get one of those little trampolines in the house, and only let them use it when they're doing their homework, or when they're studying for a test, and then it becomes really great. "Oh, Mom, can we do some homework so I can go to
Positive association. Yeah, now they're hooked on to positive reinforcement, right? Now they love what, yeah.
That's
Awesome.
right. So it's, it does. It's the foundation to my whole practice, and it's what I start with.
Yeah.
And it really defines the magic.
I think this would be a good place for parents to start the inventory, take an inventory when if they're thinking of starting this homeschooling or unschooling journey, would be a
Yeah.
good idea to understand each other learning styles. Yeah, very, very cool. Thank you so much. We learned a lot. I mean, keep it fun, right? That's the name of the game. Keep it fun, and then
Absolutely.
you'll have fun, and you could be child again with your kids.
That's right. That's right. Absolutely. And let your kids be a little bit like a parent,
Yeah.
in the sense that let them take a little bit more ownership and more responsibility, and you can, reconnect with your inner child.
Yes, yes, so nice. Thank you so much
It
for
was a lot of fun.
thank you.